All right, guys, welcome in. Another edition here of the Happy Hour Tip-Off Show powered by WagerTalk.com. He is Ralph Michaels. I'm Joe Raineri. It's all about college hoops. And we got a limited card here tonight. Big weekend ahead of us, though, but some big games here tonight, Ralph. But last night, again, the old top 25 bug against the non-ranked team ends up taking its toll as Oregon's the latest victim to go down. Upsets galore once again last night, Ralph.
Well, Joe, like we talked about, you get into this point of the season that people don't realize how hard it is to go on the conference road and win. So you have a heavy home-based schedule. You play some neutral games. And then all of a sudden you have to go on the road, and it's very difficult. Same thing happened to Auburn. Same thing happened, an undefeated team going to Alabama. Same thing happened to Oregon. It really is the case where, it's tough to win on the conference road, and you see it. And these are the first times through. I mean, conference play has just been here a while. Perhaps they were home the first weekend. There were some teams on Friday or Thursday that played their first road game of the year.
Yep.
I mean, that's crazy. This past week, I should say, was their first road game. So 2 months into the season, they hadn't played a road game. And as far as the light schedule today, I'm really happy the Big Ten and the did what they're doing, playing some conference games. It adds a lot of watchability to Friday night.
Yeah, it really does. And of course, Iowa, Michigan, going to be one that people are going to be all excited about taking a look at here tonight, Ralph, along with, let's see, we got a couple of interesting ones across the board, some of the smaller teams, but one of your favorite is also playing tonight that I can't wait for, Ralph, and that's going to be our friends over at Dayton. So we'll take a look at the market here in a minute. We'll talk some trends and angles, but some of the big covers from last night, Ralph, taking a look on the board. And so much for Gonzaga and the Santa Clara having an issue. 30 points. My word. I mean, what they win by 46 points? Crazy what the Zags did to Santa Clara. We keep thinking Santa Clara's a bad. I guess maybe the Zags are just that good.
Situational system, and I said, I wouldn't play it last night. Why wouldn't I play it? Well, two things. Santa Clara was off an upset against St. Mary's. And then that upset against St. Mary's all of a sudden makes sure Gonzaga stays motivated. So when you're the king of the hill like the Zags are, you come in extra motivated against the number 2 team. Now, I'm not saying Santa Clara is the number 2 team because they're probably number 4 behind St. Mary's and BYU. But the Zags team, all of a sudden, it's easy as the coach to say, "Look, guys, these guys just beat St. Mary's. Are we gonna give them any chance of hope?" And when you get a focused Zags team, they're that much better than everyone else in the conference.
Yep, they were real good last night. So congratulations to the Zags continuing their domination. As far as the overs go there, Ralph. Well, you had one game that was in overtime there, but other than that, I mean, Middle Tennessee and Florida Atlantic, they kept going back and forth in that game, and Florida Atlantic ends up pulling it out there. But they were down for most of that game, but that one overtime, and boy, did that go over.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Winthrop game shocked me. Now, Wintford's a fast-tempo team, so, that doesn't surprise me. But, getting to 116, their average score was probably in the high 80s. So, that one caught me by surprise. And they just went in and, Winthrop scored 116. And if you take a look, that was on the road. So they shot 65% from 2-point and, shot 27 free throws. There were 56 made free throws in that Winthrop-Hampton game.
That's just absolutely crazy. And then, of course, Memphis-Cincinnati, too. Cincinnati kind of fell behind and never was able to make the ground up, but this game went way under, Ralph. 140.5 was the total, and neither team. It kind of reminded me of the old Cincinnati ways.
Yeah, well, again, you get into the battle of the top teams in the conference, and that's often what happens is a war. Cincinnati's offense struggled. They made a run. I think they took a lead probably with about 11 or 12 minutes left. It was a real streaky game. Memphis would run off 9 out of 10 points, and Cincinnati would run couple, and then Memphis would run back couple, and Memphis just had a couple extra runs in them at home.
Yeah, couple of big time plays there last night. Ralph, what kind of stuck out to you last night? Cal State Northridge, UC Riverside, some pretty big performances by some guys here, including Northeastern.
Yeah, take a look. The first 5 were all on the road as well. Diane at Northridge, again, we've mentioned him numerous times. Yeah. He was the first time ever in the Big West to win Freshman of the Year, Newcomer of the Year, and Player of the Year last year. He was suspended the first 9 games. He just came back a few games ago, and this Northridge team is completely different with him putting up.
Yep, pretty darn impressive. And, of course, tonight, guys, I want to remind you, too, over at wagertalk.com. You can get there, or sportsmemo.com. You've got plays available not just tonight, all weekend long. It's a monster card all weekend in college hoops, including the card here tonight, Ralph. And we'll take a look at what the market is doing here in a second. Let's talk about some of these trends and angles you've got on tap for us.
Well, a long-time trend, and I'm actually going to, when we talk about the featured games, I'm going to actually lean against this trend, but need to mention it. I mean, there's very few teams going back to 2016 that have covered over 74% of their games at home, and that's exactly what Michigan State has done. 16-1 against the spread at home, 74%. Brown, a total under team on the road. Boy, they slow it down and they don't shoot well. 4-17 on the road, over under their last 21 games. Yale, a very strong home team, 13-2 against the spread at home. And 2 teams struggling in the MAAC. A lot of MAAC games today. Siena 1-9 their last 10. And Iona 1-9, their last 10 as well.
Yeah, so we'll let's dive into, because really those are the big movers and shakers on the board here. So let's talk about the two featured games of the night. We'll start Wisconsin and Michigan State. Both happen to be in the Big Ten there. And this is a game where, the Bucks are coming rolling in here. Michigan State opens up as a 7.5-point home favorite. They've been pushed to 9.5. The total is creeping up as well, Ralph, 129.5 to 131. And, here we go again. Michigan State on the road, one thing. Wisconsin home, one thing. Wisconsin on the road is another thing. So it's I understand why Michigan State's getting a lot of love right now.
Yeah, I don't agree with the move, but I understand it, coming off their worst home loss in how many years. So, one that I'm looking at that's a big line mover is, we talked about Brown being an under team, but yet that's probably the biggest mover so far. 3 points on the total, 3.5 points. We opened up 131.5. Now I see 134.5. Couple 135s as well. So 75% of the money on the overs in that game.
Yep. Yeah. And the Dayton getting a lot of love too, on not surprising there, but kind of a big number on the road against St. Louis now is 7.5. And I'm starting to see a little money come towards St. Louis right now.
Yeah, coming down. I think St. Louis has had 50% of the money on them, and it's. I think people realize Dayton's a good team, but laying 7 on the road against a team that can play some defense is a question mark. So I understand that move as well.
Yep, and again, 2 of the featured games, guys: Wisconsin, Michigan State, Michigan, Iowa, also, and. I guess that's the big question there. Iowa opens up laying 4, and now it's been pushed up to 5. The total coming down a little bit from 148 to 147. But Iowa at home, this series, I believe, has seen the underdog do pretty well over the last 9 or 10 meetings. So it just seems like 5 points for Iowa at home. Can they get it done against Michigan? I don't know. What do you think?
I lean Iowa. Iowa is the best offense in the Big Ten, no question. The problem is they have suspect defense. Michigan, though, has a good offense as well, but a lot of their numbers, let's remember that this Michigan team was not ranked to start the year.
Right.
What happened is they go, I think it was the battle for Atlantis. They beat Iowa State, North Carolina, and Gonzaga back-to-back-to-back games, back-to-back-to-back nights. Shoot the lights out, 55% in each game. So then all of a sudden they pop up in the top 10. So, but to me, that's an outlier. Anyone could go on the road in a weird setting, win 3 games in a row by being red hot. Since that time, they were 7-0. They're now 4-5. They've gone back and forth. So many people remember that wins. And I'll tell you what, the Iowa State win doesn't look so good now. The North Carolina win doesn't look so good now. And the Zags win is very impressive. I'm looking to fade Michigan on the road. They have yet to win a road game. They've lost at Louisville by 15. They lost at Illinois by 9. They lost at Michigan State by 18. They lost at Minnesota by 8. So to me, again, they haven't proved anything. They had one big series. I've faded them a couple times since then, and I have to fade them again tonight.
Yeah, it's almost the same thing in the Wisconsin-Michigan State game, Ralph. Wisconsin is 5-12 against the number in the last 17 against Michigan State. It's just, it's that kind of rivalry. It's that kind of matchup. And again, we're asking Wisconsin, do we trust them to get a win on the road against a team they haven't had a whole lot of success against, certainly against the number over the last couple of years? I keep looking at Cassius Winston thinking that, this is a guy that can take this game over at home at any particular point. It's tough to trust Wisconsin.
Yes and no. I agree with the thought, but, you also have to remember a lot of people forget about mid-season eligibility transfers that become eligible. And that was Micah Potter. This Wisconsin team was 5-5, lost to Rutgers. Micah Potter, the Ohio State transfer, became eligible. Since that time, they've gone 6-1. Potter started. He hasn't started yet. He's still backing up opponents, but he's played. He's played about 20 minutes a game each of the last 3 games. He has scored 13, 24, and 14, so he's averaging about 18 points per game. Rebounds, he's had 19 rebounds in that 3-game stretch. I think he's the difference maker. I think people, granted, I had, Michigan State a top 2 or 3 team in the country, but now you're laying 9.5 points that I think, the first team to 60 wins. So you're getting almost 15% of what the total points are for either of the one teams. There's too much value for me to pass that up. The Badgers still have a top 25 defense. This is going to be a slow-paced game. I'm not getting to the window with it, but I'll tell you what, if there's no question, my definite lean is on Wisconsin.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, if I'm going under in this game here. Opened up at 131. I think the under is hit 13 times since 2010 between these two teams. Like you said, it's going to be very slow. It's going to be very methodical. And unless there's some sort of Michigan State blowout here, I can see the under being the play in this matchup, Ralph.
Yep.
Yeah, no doubt about that. So, again, guys, light card here tonight, though. Plenty of action happening over the weekend. Some interesting games, though, too, in the Big Ten. We told you about Dayton and St. Louis is another one. And another interesting game, Ralph, on the card. I don't know if it's going to be your best bet or if you looked at this game. What about Furman and Wofford here? 2 of the top teams in the Southern Conference getting ready to do battle here tonight, and Wofford getting a couple of points in this one at home, a little home underdog situation.
Yeah, well, Furman's been an excellent road team. Going all the way back down since 2016, they've covered 68% of their road games, going 36-17. Down the stretch, they're about 14-3 their last 17 road games.
Wow.
And I do like Furman. It is going to be my best bet for tonight. I look at a team. East Tennessee State's probably the best team in the SoCon. I think Furman is the next best team. They come in at 15-4. They're a very good offense, a middle-of-the-road defense. But you probably have 2 all-conference players on Furman with Clay Mounts and Jordan Lyons that, it's rare that to have 2 all-conference players on the same team. both upperclassmen. And I think that gives them the edge, and I think that's why they're so productive on the road. You have multiple go-to scorers, and Wofford tries to slow the pace down. They're one of the slowest tempo teams.
Yep.
But I don't think that affects Furman's offense, and I clearly think Wofford's offense won't be able to keep up with them.
Yeah, it's very interesting too. I mean, Furman, one of the highest scoring teams in the country this year too, and it's kind of an interesting number at 139.5. So to your point, I don't know that Wofford adds enough to be able to get it over, and Furman certainly should be able to control what happens from a scoring perspective here. And I just think there's too many points, and you're asking Dayton to go on the road there and score an awful lot of points in order to beat a pretty good St. Louis team. This is one, though, that I do think the over is probably worth a look at, Raph. Probably going to be my best bet. The over 6-1 in the last 8 on the road for Dayton here, and it's 10-3 in the last 13 games at home for St. Louis. Just kind of feels like we might get a little bit of a shootout in this game tonight.
Well, it's weird thinking about St. Louis as an over team because, I mean, back in 2018, there was probably only five or six teams slower paced than them. Travis Ford got a point guard last year. He moved Isabel there and he upped the tempo. And this year he upped the tempo again. This is the fastest St. Louis has played in well over a decade. So I think a lot of people have that old St. Louis mentality in there.
Yep.
They still are a better team. They are a better team offensively than defensively. One concern, St. Louis is not in the favorites role, but I'll just mention this as we're talking about the Billikens. They are the worst free throw shooting team in the country. Yes, so when you're 353 in free throw shooting, certainly you don't want them as a small favorite because if you get into the hack-a-shack role, you can make up a lot of points on St. Louis, and that's why a lot of their games are close because people start to get to them and start following if they have the lead. But, in this game, Dayton clearly the superior team, and, when we've talked about Colorado, how I think they're a top 15 team. We talked about Kansas that I have as one of my top 3 teams. Their only 2 losses were to Colorado and Kansas in neutral settings in overtime. I mean, you don't have a better 2-loss resume than that. That those are your 2 losses. Colorado, Kansas, both neutral setting, both in OT. So elite offense for Anthony Grant. Obi Toppin, we talked about him last week. I think he was on top of the charts. You have a junior in Rodney Chapman who can dish the ball off well. You got shooters. You've got shooters in Topin and then Crutcher and then Watson as well. So dynamic team.
Yep, very dynamic. Also, interesting enough, guys, the underdog 26-9 against the number in the last 35 meetings between these two teams. So that certainly puts St. Louis in the mix. So going to be an interesting card tonight, guys. Light card, but a lot of Big Ten action, big matchups over there, and get ready for a crazy weekend, which is why it's important for you guys to head over to wagertalk.com. Make sure you get Ralph's plays all set up, making a profitable weekend here in college hoops. And you might as well go. He's got a dog up there tonight as well. Something that you guys might want to take a look at here on a Friday. Head into the weekend with a few extra bucks in your pocket and get ready for what is no doubt going to be a crazy college basketball Saturday and Sunday. So, Ralph, good luck with the plays, my man. Thank you very much. As always, good news is we get to come back Monday and break it all down and start all over again, my friend.
Joe, talk to you in 71, bud.
Yep, 71 it is. Good luck, guys. Enjoy the weekends. We'll talk to you on Monday.